No?
Yeah.
No. Adam? You're not your sister's keeper, but yeah. Hill rolling, moth rolling. Yeah, there you are. You look different. Parks will be here or after. Yeah, well. Yeah, I only recommend that because I'm sort of camped out here. I have to drive a lot today because we're going to do we're going to do 2 days in one. But it's good though because we'll be able to capture some things.
Are you feeling better?
On the mend. I still feel like I have water in my ears and my lungs and my nose. Yeah. But what can you do? Don't stretch.
Remember when you were like, is anyone sick?
Yeah, totally remember that. And then advising, and I had to shake hands with 86 dirty freshmen. Yeah, I should be. I should be at this point. So speaking of immune, no segue. It's 4 o'clock. Let's learn something, shall we? We got a bunch of things to cover today. We have a special guest, but don't worry about him. He's just here to learn. Things we got to do today. I got a laundry list of half announcements, half directives. But one of the things you'll notice is that there's a text set up in here today. Don't worry, this isn't intended to capture you. The only thing I'm capturing with my laptop is the audio from the classroom because there's no mics built in here. Today, what we're doing is capturing what's on the screen. If anybody's been in the analytical procedures module in Sakai, you'll see that today I did this twice, and on Sunday I did it when I met with the Benefit Juice team, was to sit down with them and do about 2 hours at SPSS and just capture what's on the screen, provide some directions, talk about what your hypotheses are, what you're trying to accomplish. The big thing being is I'm going to demo a lot of different things today, and it comes from not your team. There's another team that's doing advising, but they're, like I said, they're a little different scope. So we're going to take a look at what their survey is. I simulated some data so we can take a look at how to create some analyses. And then if you can think about how your analysis might parallel these, record the timestamp of about where we're talking about those things. So you can revisit if you want to model the behaviors that were used to create those particular analyses, those outputs. You'll be able to have them captured. As soon as we're done here, I'll post everything that we create into the analysis. I'll show you in a second. The analytical procedures module. So we got to run this stuff down today. SPSS demo, because on December 1st, your SPSS project is due. That's now posted. I borrowed a lot from Dr. Scott Wright. He gave a pretty straightforward way to walk you through some of this stuff, and I know that I've kind of, I don't know, let knowledge be a river and carve its way through our context or something. But much more straightforward assignment with a handful of direct analyses that you need to know how to do, so you know how to calculate and capture. Your proposals and projects were slated to be given back to you today. Unfortunately, I get hit by the flu, so they will be ready to go on Friday. So if you want to stop by my office tomorrow between 3 and 6, I'll make sure yours is graded. If you want to come by and get some feedback on that, I'll be available then. Outside of that, I'll be emailing everybody the scores and feedbacks for all that stuff Friday afternoon. Tomorrow, email, right. I got the last study this morning. So I was finally able to submit our 7th study IRB form, class IRB form to Todd. And hopefully, and he said 24-hour response, hopefully we should be able to just rubber stamp that and get moving and start collecting responses. But hold off for now. Now, depending on which team you are. So everybody hold off for now. Sports team. Thank you for getting all that stuff together. I did get an email back from Andrew. He told me he needed to get through Minnesota first. He got back to me Tuesday night, and I sent him a long email on Friday, and he got back to me Tuesday night, whatever night that was, Tuesday. And he explained to me a bunch of stuff with all of you guys about how he wants to launch, how he wants to roll out your survey and stuff like that. So I can forward you that email to get you the context for that. That's going to help in collecting your sample. Now, across the board for just about everybody else, challenge because I had a former student reach out to me and say, hey, we got the survey. Can we collect some responses from your class? And I was like, we got surveys too. I was like, maybe we can meet up. And he was like, cool. And then I bumped into him yesterday. I was like, so you want to do that thing? And he was like, no, I'm all set. I got mine. I was like, well, cool, man, thanks. Although it wasn't the only source I was trying to tap, I reached out to the other Marketing 434 instructors and told them that we could use some help. As it turns out, Ainsley Schultz said, yeah, that sounds great. Thing is, their surveys aren't going to be ready to launch until Monday. But your boy knows a little bit about Excel, so here's what we're going to do. Get our class roster and email addresses, along with our survey links and their survey links, and I'm going to create it.
I think they've already sent some of their back.
Not false. That's not false.
Okay.
She didn't mention that.
All right.
But she said that they need 100 respondents for all their studies, so they still may need to participate in this. Yeah, so there, yeah. This doesn't apply to everybody, but I'll do a little rotation, something in Excel, and send out a mail merge, which sends everybody on this, and this will be the frame. This is our sampling frame, and you'll be randomly assigned to like 3 studies, maybe within our class, maybe within the other class. Maybe you'll get a matrix and say, please do these. If you're willing to help out with the other ones, consider doing these as well. Granted, it's a convenient sample of other people doing Marketing 434, so there's a little familiarity there. But at least in terms of raising our base size and being able to collect some legit responses, we'll have that opportunity. So if you're down for that, we get to go forward with that. And I'm going to default you in. If this is not something you want to participate in, let me know. You don't need to let me know now. Just let me know offline, and I'll exclude you from the frame, and you won't be selected to go in any of these studies. But I thought that would be a good way for us to make sure we can start get some of those responses generated for our studies there. As soon as I hear back from the IRB, I'll be able to go forward with launch. And I put descriptions in for all the different types of studies we're collecting, that we're going to use to collect data based on your proposals, based on your midterms. You're talking about using Facebook, GroupMe, campus chat, or off-campus chat, like all those different sources. Having all of those proposals that you gave me, all that stuff got documented into the IRB submission. So thanks for letting me hang on to those for as long as I have. That's it for opening remarks, I believe. In a second, I'm going to tell you about your SPSS project, and then the balance of time, I'm going to demo some SPSS stuff with the study and the simulated data I created last night. So before I move on to introducing the SPSS project, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Joe?
So our midterm falls into the project, proposal of the project being.
So the project is the midterm. The proposal was
What we present.
Yeah, exactly. The proposal wasn't worth as much as the midterm, but since I know that they were really integrated, because the big chunk of the midterm I was saying in the context of your project, that I want to make sure that if your proposal and your midterm weren't exactly at the same level, because the midterm was due before the proposal, and so I know like you may leverage your knowledge from one to build the other. I'm sort of looking at them collectively, because if like you learn something from doing the one project, I want to make sure that I capture that. Yeah. Other question? All right. So new to the Sakai, there is a module which says pardon me, SPSS assignment. And in this module, There's a small bit of instruction, there's a document, and there's an Excel workbook. The document looks an awful lot like this. Word. Just so you know, it's due on the 1st of December, which is Friday. I don't know if anybody's got anything going on that Friday night. I heard there's some things going on Friday night, the 1st. Yeah, he's playing out at the Met. So hopefully we can go cheer him on there. But your group's got to be no fewer than 3, so no pairs. That makes sure I can keep moving this project forward. The context is here for you. It's based on some Super Bowl information. I'll let you read at your leisure. So you know, there's 6, count them 7 if you include the ID variable. Respondent, and then 6 variables here. Location, 3 attitude metrics, importance, and gender. This is, if y'all know anybody in the other section, it's adapted from a similar assignment, but it's not the same at all because I don't care about output, I care about input. What you're asked to submit to me is what we're going to be building today, which is syntax. Say syntax at the bottom. Yeah. You're providing to me, like we're going to create today, an Spss syntax file, which will generate the commands you need to do in order to execute the analyses put forth here. But it basically revolves around the quality of Super Bowl commercials, a nominal variable on where you watched the Super Bowl, how important the class of football is to you, as well as a gender variable coded 1-0 male and female. So there's 6 questions here, and then there's an assignment which follows. These 10 tasks are all weighted equal, and they increase in difficulty as you go. Starts by identifying level of measurement. There's one thing hopefully we've garnered from this semester. It's that level of measurement and raising that level of measurement. And then this Excel file needs to end up in SPSS. So you got to do that. There's also notes in here about transform and analyze, because when we are in SPSS, we have the transform menu and the analyze menu. Those are the 2 menus in SPSS where we're going to create most of our commands. Excuse me. So if you look to do something for this task, you may want to go to the transform menu. If you need to do something for this task, you may need to go to the analyze menu, and so on. But the types of things you'll be asked to do here are calculate correlations, generate histograms, frequency tables, one sample t-test, which is similar to the t-test that we would have done in statistics. Here's an expected value. I create a sample, calculate sample statistics from that, compare it to the expected value, and so on. Independent samples t-test, which we looked at a little bit before, talking about comparing groups. P-values, so big important, and we'll get to the crux of that by the end of today as well. By the time we get to task 9, we're going to be creating one-way ANOVAs as well as linear regression. So I do think that each of these tasks increases in difficulty as you go, but mostly I'm looking to see if you can generate the commands and the associated output and interpret that output. I'd like you to do as much documentation as you can in your SPSS syntax file and only use your Word document when necessary. Good syntax contains good comments and good instructions, and I'll demonstrate some of that today when we analyze the data for the survey that we're going to take a look at. This assignment isn't due for a couple weeks. I definitely suggest you at least take a look at it before Thanksgiving break. I don't know who's leaving tonight, but I do suggest you take a look at this. While we don't have class on Tuesday, I will be around by appointment next week. So if you want to get started on this or any part of the analysis for your project, do let me know, and we can set up a time to meet. Okay.
Is SPSS on all the computers on SPC?
I believe so, yes. I think it's in the library for sure, and I know it's in the labs in Bryan. Yeah, that's where we were in 107 on Sunday, and then they worked in there. Yeah. By the way, it's as easy as hitting a menu button, type SPSS, and then hit enter, and it runs a program called, I'm not joking, stats.exe. So if you want to do stats, run stats.exe. I don't even know if there's an exe equivalent for Mac in that environment. I don't think so either. So it should be available, yeah. I don't know if it.
The library has SPSS.
I don't know if students can get it. I've always gotten it there.
I think we can, my roommate said.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, but you can
She's
check it
used-
out as software too, I think. We install it, maybe.
is that what you're talking about?
My roommates used it in like a Chino right now, just like on the computer.
Oh, yeah, it's on lab computers.
So on lab computers, yes, it is on all lab computers. It should be.
I don't know if they can get it.
Right, so I know I can. I've gotten on a flash drive, plug it in, type a code, and boom,
I
it's
know she
there.
like always has to go to a Chino. And she
Okay.
was with it, so.
Maybe not your roommate.
Angela Martello, she's social work major. I don't know
All
what they do with it, but.
Well, it's the statistical package for social science, so
So-
probably social science, right? So it is available on all the lab computers. I don't know if you can install it on yours. More questions? Okay. So we have a good hour to walk through some different pieces that I'm going to demo here. Let's see, there's another piece that I missed. Oh yeah, so this is the analysis procedures module. We looked at this analysis basics deck before. We're talking about describe, compare, and relate. The work I did on Sunday, if you're doing independent samples t-tests, I highly recommend you use this this 2-hour whatnot as a reference because we do lots of t-tests and dig in deeper in there. This is the data that we'll be using for today's simulation. This is SPSS syntax files that we used for the 11:30 and 1 o'clock class. We're likely going to follow like 80% of what I did in those classes. So if, I don't know, if you're curious, you can open those up and take a look at what's on there, as well as some of the outputs that I exported into Excel. And for them, these are, I don't know why that's not me. Yeah, so it's, hey, that's about where we are then now, but we're traveling back in time. More that this is what gets captured. It's on mute right now, so we don't get feedback because microphones and stuff. But this is what we're capturing. So what I highly recommend you use this time today too is as we move through different parts of this analysis, I started recording at about 4 o'clock. It's 4:18. So if you advance the video, which will be posted in this module, to 18 minutes in, you will hear me talking about being 18 minutes in. If there's a particular section that you want to know, like that sounded interesting, but or it sounds like it's going to be part of our projects, then capture that timestamp in your notes and say, all right, independent samples t-test. We talked about that at minute 52. That way you can just fast forward to that part of the video to follow along when you want to do it yourself. So note the timestamps for today. Now it's kind of weird, trippy thing with all this fluid sickness in my head and traveling through time. All right. So that's what lives in this module now. So these are new modules over here. Analysis procedures now documents what we're doing right now. Let's go to chat. So in the chat room, there's the Hangout. So if you want to join the Hangout, that's literally the conversation that's going on right now, but it's available to you on YouTube as soon as the class is done. But what I really want for you to do is if you want to take a look at the survey that we're looking at, it's this one. It doesn't hyperlink in the chat module, but it's AZ1, Qualtrics, JFB, that guy. Which looks like this. So this is the survey that they put together. This is the preview. Here's that template with the invitation, all that good stuff. Thank you for consenting. You're the best. First question is, are you currently an undergraduate student? If you say no, you get knocked out of the survey. So let's say yes. Their goal is to figure out which offices they can model, which offices the Office of Academic Advising can model. They're thinking about, and give me some context on this. They want to model OAS. They want to model Slavin 108. Who do they want to be like? Remember what they were saying?
They didn't really give us a mirrored parallel, but they just want open interaction. So I would assume, like, what would
I guess like it would be like an okay thing to have like walk-ins
Yeah.
and stuff for people to
Yeah.
learn, but he never said like, I don't really think he ever compared it to
Give a
anything. I
frame.
think that would be
Yeah.
our own personal comparison.
But I don't think it would be like extended dialogue, like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, but at least in terms of if you're going to establish a social media presence from an academic perspective or a staff perspective, which offices would be decent to model? Maybe OAS, maybe Slavin 108, because at least they have Instagrams or Facebooks or something like that. So we start by saying, which offices have you used? I've used all of these except for campus ministry. Over the 16-week semester, how many hours do you spend with the following offices? Yes. Dean's office, not often enough. Professional development, I'm not professional. I need lots of counseling, and probably got to. Select the following social media platforms that you follow for the Office of Academic Services. So OAS, what do you follow? If you select none of the above, you skip the next question, but only based on what you select here are you provided with, oh, must be less than 100. They capped that at 100, all right. I don't believe anybody can spend that many hours there. So I didn't select Facebook, so I'm only presented with how often do I check OAS for Twitter and Instagram. And then we're going to ask about CCEPD. I only follow their Facebook. How often do I check their Facebook? Once a month. Where do you currently find information about academic requirements? Emails, I ask my friends, because registration's tomorrow, and yes, I still get advisees telling me what should I take. And freshman registration's tomorrow. Then how much information about academic advising sent via email do you read? How much do I understand? How likely are you to read morning mail? I mean, that's just me. I don't know you. Yeah, you have it automatically filtered out. How do you feel about the email sent about academic advising? If the Office of Academic Advising were to create a Facebook account, would you follow? Would you DM? Would you like? Would you comment? Would you share? If Academic Advising created an Insta, would you follow? Would you DM? Would you like? Would you comment? Would you share? If Academic Advising created a Twitter, would you follow? Would you DM? Would you favorite? Would you favorite? Would you retweet? If they created a Snapchat, would you add them as a friend? Would you DM? Would you send snaps? Would you view stories? Where would you like to see this sort of information about my advisor, about major requirements, about core requirements? Where would you like to see messages from advising? I am satisfied, even though I indicated I mostly am not. How many times a week did you meet with your advisor? 4. How long do your advising meetings typically last? 9 minutes on the dot. I've had 4 advisors since I've been here. If you answered more than one advisor, you get questions about why you switched your academic advisor. And now we get to those motivations, those, I want to get to know them better. I want to informative stuff. I want to demonstrate my value. I follow the dentist system. I want to be sycophantic. Talking about academic advising. What do you talk about there? We talk about my interests. We talk about the core requirements, my course material, and goal setting. How did you feel when you left? How satisfied were you? So these are about where we're wrapping up. We get to satisfaction. Dissatisfied, dissatisfied. My advisor's effort to build a personal relationship, knowledge of the core, their prep, their connections for career opportunities, encouragement to continue contact, goals and aspirations. Do you love your advisor? It's an important thing that your advisor can work on. They need to be more prepared. And now let's get to some demos. And my class year is a sophomore. I found this survey on the floor. Done. Boom. So that's our survey. We're talking about channels to deliver message. We're talking about satisfaction with your advisor. We collect some demos at the end, and that's it. That's the survey we're looking at. When you export the data using Qualtrics, you've got a number of different choices. You can export that data as an SAV file, and that looks like this. That's an SAV file. One thick, you can see that's closer to you now. No, it's farther away. That's good. SAV, which is the same file which is available here, although you can't really open it on your machine. If I have SPSS running, I don't have it open either. So I suppose that's the first thing I'm going to want to do. For me, it's creating a new syntax file. Here's a new syntax file. I had too many. Let me get rid of one. There's nothing here. This is where I tell it to do stuff. I don't even have to spell anything right. Here's why. The first symbol we're learning about is the asterisk. Not spelled with an X because that's the cartoon. Asterisk. Anytime you start a line in SPSS syntax with an asterisk, it is a comment. You can leave notes, but you must end your sentences with a period. Because if you don't end it with a period, SPSS doesn't realize your sentence is complete and it won't execute your command. Please.
You ended it with a quotation in 5, but
No, then I hit backspace because my fingers are fat tonight. Yeah. No, that's fair. No, and by the way, that's going to be the second most valuable thing you can do. First is to timestamp things you know that you're going to want to do. The second is to call me out on things that, like, I've been in this environment just about as long as I've been in the Excel environment. So I'm going to just do things and try to explain every keystroke, every command, everything I do as best I can. But if there are things that I just do, like, stop me, throw something at me, or whatever you gotta do to get my attention. So this is also, like, to be fair, this is where you might start by saying today's date, what we're working on, who you're working with, me, myself, I, so on. But when you start your syntax with some comments, that's to give yourself some context. If you're building out something for a client and you know you're working on this certain context of a project, it's a sports thing, it's a food thing, it's a beverage alcohol thing, it's good to give yourself some context there. But once you set your context, you got to go get your data. And you get your data by getting your data. Just like any other piece of software you use, you got the file menu up here. I want to open my data. It's that data that's sitting on the desktop. This file here, 1130 sim data 2. But here's where you start to differ from anything else you've done before. In the past, if you want an open file, you select the file and hit open. Everything we do in here, rather than open, we paste. This is how I got my stuff. I went and I get it. This is the syntax command to file, open, data, this file, open. If I hit open, it does this thing I have highlighted. It's not case sensitive, but it does end with a period. I don't even worry about this. This just gets in the way. This is the only thing I've done. And when I run this, there's a number of different ways I can run this. It will go get that file. My cursor, I can have it just in the sentence, called a command. I can highlight part of it. I can highlight all of it and then some. Control R is what I use to run. Or that big green arrow up here. Well, it's like an arrow or a triangle missing the shaft. But I can hit that and it will run. And it goes and it gets that file. The output, this is the output document. And here's where I start swearing at SPSS output for not allowing me to hotkey cut and paste. This is the only thing I've done, is I went and I ran that. My output says output up there. Got that file. There's no other output because all I did was got that data. 1130 sim data 2. So here's my data. There's two views in your SPSS data. There's the data view and the variable view. Data view looks just like Excel with the header row. All of those different variables we may have captured along the way, including your latitude and longitude. How it was distributed, this was test channel because I simulated some of these data points in Qualtrics. And then it goes to Q1 and Q2 sub 1, sub 2, sub 3. By the way, underscore often read as sub, as in subscripts. Q2 sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4. If only I knew what those variables stood for. That's what the variable view is for. Each one of these rows represents a variable. And these columns demonstrate the richness of the rich data that I've mentioned before. So those 5 Q2s were those early questions of which offices have you used during your time at Providence College? Academic services, academic advising, CCEPD, personal counseling, campus ministry. Go back to that survey. Yes, rights, I have them. I am a student. It's these 5 questions. But the way SPSS divides up this nominal level question is into 5 separate variables with yes or no. Q2 sub 1 will have either a 1 or no value, depending on whether or not someone selected it. One of the first things I might want to do in summarizing or describing my data is to get some counts or some frequencies to get a sense of how many people said each one of these different responses. It's either transform or analyze. It's analyze, and I want to describe it. And the thing I want to describe is frequencies. So I understand the font is small, but I tell you, transform and analyze are the 2 menus that we're going to need. And most of the things that we need to do are in analyze. And most of the things that I talk about here, the way I've talked about, describe, compare, relate. And analyze, descriptive statistics, compare means, and correlate. Describe, compare, relate. That's how you do data analysis, those three menus. Most of the things that you have to do in your SPSS assignment is going to be from describe, compare, or correlate. In this case, I just want to get some frequencies. I select frequencies. I want to get frequencies for those Q2 questions. So I scroll through here until I find them. Those 5 things, holding the shift button and the arrow. Again, don't hit OK. We're going to hit paste, but there's always these options over here. We can get means. Wouldn't make sense for this variable, but I can just check them off to show you. I'm going to select mean, mode, standard deviation as options. I could create a I could create a histogram here if I needed to create a histogram in SPSS. Different formatting and other options here, but they're all available to you. But I never hit OK. I hit paste, and nothing happens. It's like, where are you? There you are. Frequencies command for the variables Q2, sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, sub 5. Standard deviation, mean, mode, all things I checked. Histogram, thing I checked. Order is the order defaults to, and its representation here. Excuse me. And the order is default analysis. With my cursor anywhere in here, Control R will run. The log will always show you what you ran in order to execute what's available to you here. It will provide a number of different types of outputs. I said I wanted some frequency tables, so it gave me some of those. It gave me some histograms, although they don't make any sense for this type of variable. I'm going to grab this thing here that says statistics, though. This is generally always provided anytime you run a frequencies command. I have to copy like this because SPSS output doesn't respond to hotkeys, although Excel does. Although Excel does. Cool, so now we have those 5 questions. So there were 59 valid responses to I've gone to OAS. 47 for Dean's Office, 57 for Slavin 108, 48 for counseling, and 31 for campus ministry. All of these variables or all these counts here for missing, it just doesn't give you a 0. It just tells you that nobody selected it or that this particular respondent did not select it. What's super handy about this is no mouse, highlight those things, hit F11. Sorry, didn't activate my function lock. F11. Now I have a bar chart. Now, while these labels down here are kind of garbage, I now have a graphical summary of the total count of people who provided me these responses, like that. Another variable we might want to look at is further down the line, towards the end when we got to demographics at the very end. What's your class year? Class year was question Q33. Now, rather than following that same set of commands, Gesundheit.
Thank you.
Use one of those. This right here, so I don't point, click, and paste. I know shorthand, I know syntax. FRE is the abbreviation for frequencies. Q33 is the variable I want, and I just want to get counts. I don't need any of this other stuff. So when I say free Q33 and hit Control R, it gives me the statistics for Q33, which is what is your class year. Copy and paste into Excel. Paste. Zoom to selection. Alt HMC to clear the merge center. Call this year. Highlight those 10 cells. Hit F11. That's a bar chart. I don't want that. I want a pie chart. I don't know what those things are. So I add a legend. I make it big so you can see. I blow this one up because it's the big piece. And in 30 seconds, I now know the distribution of class years from my sample. There are ways you can do things quickly, but stepping through the analysis menu or analyze menu to get your mean comparisons, whether you're doing a one sample t-test, an observed to an expected value, an independent samples t-test where you got two groups, something like paired samples over time, one-way ANOVA if you have an independent variable with more than one level categorical, or more than two levels of the categorical independent variable. We'll take a look at some more of those, but all of these things that I'm going to show you from here on out follow effectively the same procedure, which is go to the Analyze menu, select some options, pick out the variables that I want, pick out the options that I want, the syntax. What's more is as soon as you have some syntax that does what you want it to do, you've gone through the effort of specifying those are the statistics that I want, and I want the histogram as well. You just copy and paste this. Say this was counts for how frequently offices were used, ended with a period. Notice when I take the period away, SPSS thinks the whole thing is a comment. I put the period back in there. Only the comment's a comment, and the command is now a command. But if I copy this and say, you know what, I don't want those variables. There were those satisfaction variables at the end I was interested in. Those, where were they? Here, yeah. How satisfied are you with my advisor's whatnot? 1 is dissatisfied, 5 is satisfied. I'm actually going to say that here. 1 is dis, 5 is sad. This is just a comment for me, so I know that low is bad and high is good. These 6 variables here, response to Control C. Note, this layout is just as friendly as this layout. Don't like rows, like you some columns, or like you one column and many rows, or one row and many columns. There's this little pentagon here, and this one here, and a line connecting them. SPSS thinks that this whole thing is one sentence, from the F to the period. Same thing goes up there. There's a pentagon and a pentagon. It's not a regular pentagon. It's a pentagon. There's a line between it saying that's one sentence, or command if that's what you want. And you just put those variables in here because you like what that did and you want to do it again here. So you just swap out the variables that you want. I can't tell you how many analyses I've done because I only did it once. And then I like that analysis, and then when I get new data, new variables, I just swap out the variables to do the same analysis. Don't tell anybody because it's market secrets. Check this out. Now I run this, and I've got histograms, and I've got frequency tables. And now histograms make sense because I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 where low is bad and high is good. How satisfied are you with regards to the following? My advisor's effort to build a personal relationship. Not bad. I mean, looks like the mean is 3.25, so slightly above dead center neutral. That one looks aggressive. I don't know what that's about. Knowledge of core requirements. So we look at these histograms and we get some interesting shapes. And note, this is not, this one right here, how satisfied are you, my advisor's support of greater goals and aspirations. So I only simulated this data. I didn't do it to like try to tell a story or prove a point. But I've mentioned before, like you can look at these 5-point scales and sometimes they can be treated like interval scales and sometimes less so. Sometimes you think that they're continuous, but this is anything but a normal distribution. This is pretty polar. You've got a group of people who disagree, a handful of people who are neutral, and then a group of people who agree or are dissatisfied and satisfied. You basically got two groups there. Rather than saying, oh yeah, like we saw in this one up here about, up 3. Yeah, you know, it's generally, it's in that 3 to 4 range. A couple people are a little bit less and a couple people are a little bit more, and maybe it's negatively skewed just a little bit, but like, you know, we're right there about 3 to change. Looking at the shape of the distribution can tell you how you want to use that data, whether it makes sense to dichotomize, to do a top 2, to do a bottom 3, something like that. That's why histograms are so useful. I don't like these histograms for anything except being able to get a quick snapshot of what a variable looks like. I would much rather, let's say, copy this data, bring it to Excel, paste it, Alt-W-G, zoom to selection.
What was that one again?
Sequential, Alt-W-G. Yeah, sorry, W. Oh, that's a liquid vowel, W. Do it with me here, W. And then merge center, Alt-H, MC, because I want to get rid of that. It's always there. But now I can do the same thing here. Highlight those 12 cells, F11. Close the gap width. That looks awfully familiar. Awful like a fox. This means I can edit different parts of this if I want to. They're a little bit more, I don't know, more user-friendly when it comes to editing for your storytelling if you're trying to describe a certain variable. I think they're more user-friendly to edit than something like this. I may have mentioned LAST before, the acronym for Legend, Axis, Scale, and Title. So do we need a legend on here? No, but we did need a legend on here. Axis, if this is big enough, doesn't need a label. So we probably want an axis title on here, both for the horizontal and the vertical, because this is count. And this is your satisfaction. I suppose this is satisfaction with something. Goal, support. Legend axis scale. That scale looks fine to me. Probably could cap at 25. Title, goal, support. Legend axis scale and title. It's the last thing you do before leaving a chart. Now all we've done so far is describe. We haven't compared, we haven't related. And that's just the first part of storytelling by using only the frequencies command. We can create all this stuff here. What's up?
For line 20, when you just use FRE, it's, like you said, it's the same thing, but if you're going to do multiple questions, all you need is just a space between them.
Yeah. So I could do Q31, and that would do class year 31 is GPA. There's actually other operators you can use as well. But SPSS, when it looks at this data, it sees it in the order that we have here. So 31 and 33 is what I have. Shoot, where'd you go, command? here. But let's say rather than doing 27 in sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, like this, I can use the operator to, TO.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't look at them alphabetically or numerically. It looks at them in the order like this. So 27 to 30, or 27 sub 2 to 34.
So if you wanted to run a frequency on everything, you had to just do the first one to the last question. Like hypothetically,
Have fun in Minnesota.
you just had like 5 questions on a survey and you want a frequency for all of them, you just do 1 to the last one. So
Nope. ALL, that's all.
that's easy.
And that's all the variables in your data set. So that's 8 characters. You can get, you can see everything you have there. You can use, there's like shortcuts and little word things, and SPSS is generally pretty good at, I think. I've seen worse languages. Now, let's see. In a second, I wanna see if there's any part of this that looks like what your studies are executing, so that maybe I can demonstrate something that you would be interested in investigating presented here. There is one analysis that I definitely need to show you, and that's the ANOVA, which we call one way or another. One way is the ANOVA, and this is something that we use when we have a categorical independent variable with more than 2 levels, class year, and a sufficiently continuous dependent variable. For example, satisfaction, like those Q27s and such. Again, all sorts of notes. I can tell you all the syntax I've ever run is full of swearing and whatnot. Eric, what's up? Independent variable, yeah. Which, in the context of ANOVA, they actually call independent variable, they call it your factor. I want to use this to compare averages because I want to know if maybe some class years are more satisfied with aspects of their advising than other class years. Analyze. The thing I want to analyze is I want to compare some means. I'm going to compare using the one-way ANOVA. Get closer so you can see that big. Too close. Back it up. Again, as soon as you know how you like your ANOVA syntax set up, point and click, you're just going to copy and paste variables in there that you want. For me, I want to use Q33 as the factor. We saw Q33 before was the class year. 27, those are the dependent lists. Options over here. Contrast, not something I'm going to play with. Post hoc tests. I believe when I introduced this villain or this analysis technique, I said that there were a whole bunch of post hoc after the fact comparisons, which to the best of my knowledge are a matter of preference. I'm curious.
It's a statistical theory. Basically, in theory, when you have a random sample, you can only use it once. Right? So then post hoc is your answer. Yeah.
I don't want to dig too far in the post hoc here. I want to get to the F and the P.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So these are all tests which help you to determine the nature of the group differences which follow. But the things I think that are really useful for us whenever we calculate an ANOVA in here is you want the descriptive statistics and you want the means plot. Means plot people tend to like because that's a visual interpretation of these different groups. Can also be indicative if you have, if your categorical stuff is somewhat ordinal in nature, you can get a little bit more insight, which we may see here. But again, rather than hitting OK, I'm gonna hit paste. You mind? Thanks. Keep it down, boys. Go Friars. Not fully shallow at once. So here's where we go. These were the dependent variables. Those are the satisfaction variables. Remember the Q, the 27s are satisfaction, where 1 is not, and 5 is Dave Hester. All right, went deep with that one. No takers. I said I wanted a means plot. I wanted descriptive statistics. Let's run it. And to be honest, anytime I run something, I usually get rid of all my output because it's noisy. I would rather look at just the output that I'm after. The log says I ran this ANOVA. The command is one way. There's a lot of output. These are all the descriptive statistics I asked for here, which give me things like group counts, group means, standard deviation, standard errors, the 95% confidence interval for the mean of those things. Probably did confidence intervals back in 2017, your point estimate plus or minus your margin of error. Probably did those back in the day, perhaps. But really what I'm after here is our ANOVA. Copy and paste to show you. Each one of these is in itself its own model. And when we calculate t-tests, we calculate correlations. When you do any of those, you're calculating an R for your correlation, it's got a significance level. When you calculate a t-test, it's got a significance level. Here, we're calculating an F statistic, and it has a significance level. No H, no H. HMC. All right. Significance level has a synonym. Remember the synonym for the significance level? No. It's our p-value. Remember the part that said, know this, know your p-value. And the smaller the p-value you have, the more evidence you have that your effect is real. So each one of these represents a model. And each one of these models looks at these 4 different groups because there were 4 groups. There's freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors. And it looks at a ratio between these 2 values, calculates that as an F. When we did test statistics and stats, we said it was sampling error over standard error. Here, we're doing effectively the same thing. We calculate an F statistic. As a ratio between those 2 values provided here, which is between groups. So there are 4 groups. 4 minus 1 is 3, and that's our degrees of freedom. Perhaps we remember degrees of freedom from statistics. That tough n minus 1 formula. That's effectively what we're doing here as well. This is the test statistic. But rather than being sampling error over standard error, it's the ratio between these mean squares. But really where we go is we look for this column of p-values to see where this significance value may be less than 0.05. That's the convention in social science, marketing. We look for p-values that are less than 0.05. That indicates to us that we have a significant difference or a significantly large effect based on the sample that we acquired. None of these values is close to 0.05, so we should walk away and say there's nothing of interest here. Perhaps. Though I suspect, with our studies, our sample sizes may be small. Your sample size is your number of observations. The more things you observe, the more evidence you have. The more evidence you have, the more statistical power you have. This p-value right here is less than 0.10, which in some circles people will call marginally significant, or directionally significant, or we have other terms for less than 0.1 in your circles. Marginally significant is usually what we get away with. Always look for the new language. We're talking about marginal significance. This is because we don't have a lot of evidence. We don't have a lot of observations. If we have 4 groups and a sample size of 99, that means we're on the order of an average of 24 to 25 observations per group. Some have less, some have more. We saw that already. But we're usually around 20. Labels. Somewhere between 20 and 30 for each of these groups. But this indicates that whatever this variable is, how satisfied are you with my advisor's encouragement to continue contact, that one of these groups may be somewhat different from at least one other group in the sample, which is where the means plots come into play. How about this one? Yeah, so it's encouragement to continue contacts. We said 3 is satisfied, or sorry, 5 is satisfied, 1 is not satisfied. Our scaling on the y-axis goes from 2.25, which is dissatisfied, to 3.25, which is neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. So it looks like perhaps for first-year students, class of 2021, as students get older, sort of ordinal thing, they're really, I guess it's ordinal. I would think of it more, it's ordinal. Maybe directionally as students get older, they become, perhaps, now this is the marginal significance, necessarily jump to huge conclusions or huge inferences here. But if we're going to try to draw any sort of conclusion based on some marginal significance here, excuse me, it's that our level of dissatisfaction dissipates as we get older with respect to my advisor's encouragement to continue contact. Primarily speaking, what we're after is to look at each one of these individual models, look at the p-value associated with the F statistic to determine whether or not any one of these 4 groups might be different from any one of the other 3. That leaves us about 15 minutes. I think if you want to take a minute or two, talk to your teams. See if there's things that maybe look like the questions that we've asked in here that are similar to the types of questions you have asked in your survey. So that if you want me to help demonstrate to you what syntax would look like for the types of questions you're after, we can absolutely make that happen with the time we have left. So I think I want to give you a couple minutes. And if you want to review the questions that were asked in this survey, again, that link is available in the chat room. Take a minute, see what you got. While I mouth breathe a little bit.
So just I kind of forgot, so the satisfaction scale was 7 was dissatisfied, 1 was satisfied, right? I didn't see.
This is a 5.5 is satisfied, 1 is dissatisfied. But it's all simulated.
It's all similar.
Oh, yeah. We haven't collected anything.
I thought it was some-
Oh, no, that's the whole point. You've been advising for a while. Yeah. Like, we're just trying to target what the right way for advising.
Even the simulated result, I just for the variable which you were showing this to. Oh, yeah, the graph. Oh, okay, so we are going from the younger student. But so actually the older student is more satisfied.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean.
Yeah. But the trend line is even I know it's
Yeah. But I don't know, like, I tend to, it's work. It is.
For sure. And here then you can, I mean, because that's what I was okay, we have freshmen, sophomores, and now compare them versus juniors and seniors. Here and we'll definitely get significant.
Yeah.
For example.
We just want to say those first 2 years. Or, I mean, I think for business students who have the first year advising and then they get shipped off to somebody else. Or we can look at groups who had one advisor versus a number of different advisors. I just think there's so many interesting ways to chop this thing up.
And then I do in my SSC, you go to data view. Not the variable. What I do the very first thing is portraits. And read the how satisfied are you?
Oh,
So
yeah.
just for the variables, and it's very easy to see.
Yeah. Do you ever use Excel to write your syntax? Do you use syntax?
I use syntax, but you have like the same knowledge.
You know what you're asking for.
If a company always does.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Which is, to the analysis, the cleaning is what takes 20 hours.
And because the research right is always different. And also,
I played with the words, that's how.
Honestly.
Oh, you locked it in, my dude.
All right, teams, any things that we're targeting, things that look similar to what we're asking? What's up? Anything SPSS related? Yeah. Go.
To be like,
I guess.
I would go like tracking impressions overlapping different media sources. So let's say there are commercials on Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. So I want to see how many people get impressions from Facebook only, how many people get impressions from Facebook on Twitter, people fall into the category of getting impressions from all three. I
Uh-huh.
want to be able to calculate that overlap, 30,000 at 100% of people
Yeah.
that are actually getting 100%.
Yeah.
Some people might not get impressions from any of those, but like how do you make something like that?
So, yeah, I've seen a couple different ways to approach that. Have you ever heard of a turf analysis? Total unduplicated reach and frequency. One of the classic ways that we think about this, maybe this has some similarity to your question. Like if you go, you ever eat ice cream?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have I?
What's your favorite ice cream?
Mint chocolate.
So you go and they don't have mint chocolate chip, what do you want?
Cookie dough.
They don't have cookie dough, what do you want?
Oh man, that's getting hard. Cookies and cream.
So it sounds like there's this sort of chocolate theme, some sort of bits of chocolate and mixed in with something else. So as long as I have something that accomplishes that goal, I don't need to have all three of those flavors. I just have to make sure of the 10 flavors that I actually stock on my shelf, I have something that. So one question might be, if we're looking at all of these different sources, how do we make sure that we're hitting all of these different possible media consumers? I don't consume Facebook because Facebook is evil. I'll consume Twitter, but I've just figured out that Twitter is evil. So I might start consuming Snapchat because it hasn't been deemed to be evil for old people yet. Like, there's only so much trouble I can get in. So one of the questions might be, are we having enough channels to get this message out there? Question you're asking, but there's another way we can think about it, which is we have here at the very beginning of this data, questions about, do you follow, which one is this? Do you follow OAS on Facebook? And this is, do you follow Slavin 108 on Facebook? And that's Q42 and Q62. So Q4 sub 2 is Facebook OAS. Q6 sub 2 is Facebook CCEPD, right? We could say compute Facebook any, and then say if Q42 equals 1 or Q62 equals 1, Facebook any equals 1. And so now we know how many people have follow either one of those on Facebook. But not only can you do that for one, like, are you a Facebook user of any kind, but you could go across the different channels by which you can follow Slavin 108 to see if any of those, in which case you could, there's functions such as if any one Q61 to Q64, then Facebook CCEPD
Wait, what does that stand for now?
any equals 1. This is just another command that says if any of these variables takes on the value of 1, we're going to say that you follow CCEPD. But you could use ORs, you can use any's, they effectively do the same thing. But I'm trying to get a sense of what you're trying to collapse when you talk about, I want this or that. But if you're talking about a Venn diagram, make a Venn diagram.
I think I should probably clarify the goal a little bit better. I get what you're saying, we're gonna reach our target market at least once. I mean, we're doing 3 big vehicles, but if there's 10 people and Facebook has 2 impressions per ad, and that hits 2 people, and Snapchat has 5 impressions per ad, and that hits 5 different people, and then LinkedIn has 2 impressions, but that hits these two people again. Like if a certain person within our target market gets hit with an impression 3 times, it's turned into a sale, like theoretically. So we want to know, do you get what I'm like trying to say? And like think about the 2, 2, and 5. If 2 of those people in that target market are hit with all 3 ads, that's going to turn into a sale. But if it's 2, 2, 5, and those 9 impressions total are spread with different people, there's no sales at all.
Yeah.
I want to calculate how much money we're getting from the actual ads.
I mean, it sort of seems like it's a probability thing. Like the probability of being hit by a particular ad in one vehicle is. Can you hang on until 5:16? We can discuss a little bit more because we know we got 2 minutes left or 1 minute left, and I didn't even get back to if anybody had any questions that related to their studies that I can show you real quick.
Yes.
What do you got, Vic?
Well, they have 2 questions that we asked the same question. Just how many times do you meet with your advisor less semester, and on average, how long do your advisor meetings typically last?
Correlation between frequency and length of meeting, or what are you trying to do?
Yes.
Guess what? If you want to calculate a correlation, but yeah, you use the correlations command. And if those 2 variables are in our data set as, and I think it was towards the bottom. No. You remember where they asked them? 20 and 21? Q20, Q21. You could also get to this. Hey, it's 5:15. Thanks for sticking around. By using the correlate bivariate and then just selecting the variables that you wanted. And it gives you the long form of that. But really, that gets your correlation matrix. And the command is just correlations. Also, I'll be available, like I said, by appointment if you guys want to get a head start next week. But also after Thanksgiving break, I wasn't just setting up 2 hours for benefit. If y'all want to grind out some analysis once you get some preliminary stuff, syntax is we write the syntax with a small data set. When you get more respondents, you run the same syntax and you see if you get more power. Anyway, enjoy your turkey days. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, see you guys.
Bye. Thank you.
See you, Mom. See you guys.
Well, let's see what the problem is.
Yeah. I do have an advising appointment at 5:30.
I'll make sure.
So,
Do better. Happy Thanksgiving.
thanks,
Bye.
Martha.
Retweet.
Love it. Send a cart.
I like Larry to retweet.
Send a cart.
Thank you.
See ya.
Good break.
You too. Thanks.